Hello fellow Americans, this message is for we the 99% in the United States of America, our congressmen, our senators, our president, our Attorney General of United States, Director of FBI, Inspector Generals at Department of Justice, Inspector General at Security Exchange Commission, Chairman of SEC, and especially to Financial Services Committee from both parties, Democrats and Republicans, led by Jeb Hensling and Maxine Waters, and the Banking and Housing and Urban Committee in the United States of America. And as well, Chuck Grassley and Bob Goodlatte, both the chairman of House and Senate Judiciary Committees. My name is Kulwant Sandhu. I'm also known as, I go by the name Ken, that's my nickname in America, Ken Sandhu or Kulwant Sandhu. My current case number is 2:15-CR-023-GEB. Now, I really want to bring this story in a video, unprofessional format at this point, as my financial well-being has been totally destroyed by a very dangerous and fraud people at Department of Justice under Obama administration, led by Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch, and two directors of FBI. The current one is Mr. James Comey. And the shocking part here is, to narrate the story here, is Netflix is the biggest Ponzi scheme in this country, bigger than Enron, WorldCom, Bernie Madoff, or .com, or anything we can call off at this point. What brought my attention to this Netflix scam? In 2010, companies started streaming video content, moving away from transitioning, I would say, away from DVD by mail business. And the stock has been created into a bubble. And I saw one of the hedge fund gentlemen named Lenny Brecken out of New Jersey was short the stock, was coming on CNBC and claiming that Netflix is cooking books. So we were on Yahoo message chat boards, and I got in touch with Mr. Lenny Brecken. He was putting the information there, so I looked through the information. Then I was able to contact him and discuss the issue. And in 2010, because he, being a ex-analyst in the industry, he knew much more than me. So what happened is, at that point we started sharing information, exchanging notes, and he brought up the cookbook scam. He was good at looking at how, he's hiding and cooking the books with the subscriber numbers and the churn rate and all that stuff. I can go into detail later. But the question here is, when we went through this, and I started also investigating at that time the stock, and I also went short the stock myself at that point, thought that stock is already overvalued and it's extreme bubble in 2010. So what happens is, then when I started taking information, I found some very disturbing trends. First of all, Lenny Brecken and me at one point decided to put all the documents on the Google Doc and provided the link on Yahoo message boards to people, to whoever are shorting and suffering from the short squeezes, should look into the matter and see what's going on. And at that time, we found out that Reed Hastings, the CEO of the company, Barry McCarthy, the CFO at that point, started looking into what we were screaming out there with the facts. And later, when he saw that these questions are being raised, he started not to disclose churn rate. He also abandoned eventually at a later stage after the crash in 2011 not to go with the real-time question answer session with the analyst and the shareholders, and he totally changed the fraud to a video recorded with his own crime masters who were helping him manipulate the stock and loot the pensions of the firefighters, teachers, police officers, and rest of us. So what happens here is my discovery went into a totally different direction in 2010 when I looked at the float of the total number of shares of Netflix in the float, and went back into 2009 and backwards and looked at who owned those shares and how many shares were lent short. What I found was a very interesting facts that majority of the shares were concentrated holding by Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Fidelity, technology cross venture led by Jay Hogg, and Insiders and Netflix, Reed Hastings and Barry McCarthy and rest of the gang. And company balance sheet was wonderful, but they were lent 200 million shares beside they having a lot of money in their bank. And the streaming rights to content they received from Starz at that point, limited for trial basis, got it for very cheap. So they came up with this Ponzi scheme to short squeeze and create a bubble in the stock so they can enrich themselves by manipulating the stock. So if we look through the SEC filings, what we find is that Netflix concentrated holding, we call there is a total float, then we look at the trading float, who are the trading active in the float, that who are actively trading the stock, and they were Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Fidelity through their hedge fund cronies in Connecticut, and Jay Hogg at Technology Cross Ventures through their connected hedge fund mafia. So what happens is the short squeeze has to be connected with the data collected from SEC Edgar filings that the share buybacks of the company with entire cash flow being used to buy back the shares when they were racking up content liability in billions of balance sheet with a negative cash flow. And they had taken 200 million in line of credit. Everything in 2010 and 2011 was used to buy back the shares and massively issue themselves stock options, insiders, create bubble, cook a book, manipulate the security by an organized gang, and that crime is listed at the Securities Exchange Commission. It is listed at a FINRA, and it is also listed at Federal Bureau of Investigation. And that crime is insider trading and manipulation of a security. Let me be brief here and explain that crime. It's called manipulation is an intentional conduct designed to deceive investors by controlling or artificially affecting the market for a security. Manipulation can involve a number of techniques to affect the supply of or demand for a stock. They include spreading false or misleading information about a company, improperly limiting the number of publicly available shares, or rigging quotes, prices, or trades to create false or deceptive picture of the demand for a security. Now, those who engage in manipulation are subject to various civil and criminal sanctions. Now, fellow America, I provided this information and data to Securities Exchange Commission going on their whistleblower web domain and filing a complaint to the enforcement director at SEC, Mr. Robert Khazami, and Mary Shapiro was the chairman, and head of trading and markets, I think is Mr. John, I don't remember his name top of my head at this moment. But anyway, I did go to the concerned authorities and started claiming, screaming that this company is playing the biggest Ponzi loot scheme with the manipulation of a security, abusing shareholder value and board of directors. Now, this leads to one man who is a director at Netflix and also a big investor in Netflix, Mr. Jay Hogg, Jayhoag, from Technology Cross Ventures, who controlled a major chunk of shares at Technology Cross Ventures and also sitting on the board of directors. When I connected all the dots with Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley and these guys, it leads to a nexus organized gang. And Reed Hastings and Barry McCarthy, the CFO, all working for Jay Hogg at Technology Cross Ventures along with Goldman Sachs and a venture capital firm operating a very big network of Ponzi scheme in the Silicon Valley and Wall Street to loot hundreds of billions from the pensions of the teachers, firefighters, and police officers, the rest of us anyway. And I've seen and connected the dots on many other occasions where Jay Hogg is on the board of directors, say on Trulia and Zillow, which are publicly traded. And when there was a merger and short squeeze, I again find Jay Hogg to make hundreds of millions of dollars in a short squeeze. I've seen funding from Technology Cross Ventures by the same crooks, Barry McCarthy and Reed Hastings and these criminal gang at Technology Cross Ventures who are in bed with each other here. They invested in Chegg. And Chegg is also a publicly traded company which is in the business of renting used books, another Ponzi scheme, and big money being made there by the same gangsters. And I can go into many details, but I'll keep it brief here. I'll go back to the issue here. In 2011, when I started really screaming too much at SEC, and what happens, that story I will narrate, but I want to go a little bit backwards to in 2011. In February of 2011, I went to my own congressman, Jerry McNerney, in California, and got an appointment with his field representative, Gary Prost, and explained them that what has happened to this country under the mortgage scam, which I was also a big victim of that scam. But then I said, they were bailed out, and I need to talk to our congressman to put in legislation to protect us from this corporate crime by manipulation, where they can loot the billions from the pensions under this kind of a Ponzi scheme, from the pensions of firefighters, teachers, police officers, rest of us. 3 days I was able to talk to Gary Prost with my congressman's field representative, trying to explain him, show him. And fourth day I got a call from federal police, Washington Capitol Police, which protects the congressman, that did I visit my congressman? I said yes. And did you ask your congressman and threatened him to regulate the salary of a CEO? I said no. I went there to talk about the loopholes being created by these criminals by SEC and FINRA, and how they're looting us, and how this fraud legislation through lobbyists is being done to let them loot everything they can without any fear. So you're legalizing the theft of the American blood, sweat, pensions and savings. So there is some legislation required to stop that. And that legislation was to stop the buyback of the shares in the companies when you are not profitable and you're burning cash, and then abusing and manipulating and issuing yourself shares to benefit insiders. Imagine if you get 5 million stock options in a company, or 1 million stock options in a company, and your stock is at $40, and now with the help of the organized gang you manipulate the security, you do short squeezes, and the same gang is manipulating the security, controlling the float, writing the research reports, and being the market makers. Imagine how much you can loot. Same thing was done in Netflix in this case. The shares were taken from nothing, $40 to $50 to $300 by July 2011. With sheer fraud, used every penny to buy back the shares, and massively dumping into that all the holding by Jay Hogg, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Fidelity. They were all, and shocking part is a lot of officers, when they knew that we were questioning, they started jumping off the ship. They resigned and left. Even CFO Barry McCarthy left before that July 2011 earning report. And I was screaming at Robert Khazami, at SEC Enforcement Director, and Mary Shapiro, that this company will run out of cash and the company will be bankrupt by July. But Goldman Sachs comes 2 weeks earlier on CNBC, Ingrid Chung, their chief analyst, and pumps the stock and say that we are pounding the table, 330 target. We are saying we are raising the earning estimates for 2012 and subscriber numbers bizarre numbers that they gave out. And at that time, they had 5 million shares in their pocket, Goldman Sachs. So they did a short squeeze at that, right 2 weeks before that earning report. They knew the company is out of cash, company is basically bankrupt because they were running this Ponzi scheme. I was screaming at SEC why the actions are not being taken here. So what happens is at that point in July, earning comes out. And that's exactly happened what I said. And we can have the recording as a proof from SEC domain of the conference call of July by Mr. Reed Hastings saying on the call, I do not have any money. And the whole story in the media was spun about very different subscriber numbers, this and that, or changing the business model. This was a sham, misleading, deception, all the crime listed in manipulation of a security and insider trading, crime listed at SEC, FBI, and FINRA. So what happens here? Now the company comes out and caught red-handed, and he's saying that I need $700 million to be viable. And then he says in the conference call that $350 million are already committed from Jay Hogue, who is inside on the board of directors and also the mastermind behind this crime in the manipulation loot. And 350 I need to get it from the market. So 350 million were arranged from T. Rowe Price after that in 2011. And 350 million was given by Jay Hogue at Technology Cross Ventures with a zero convertible coupon. And I did not understand zero convertible coupon, so I called up Wedbush Security, Mr. Michael Pachter, who was only the bearish analyst, was telling the truth to the American people that this is a fraud. And basically, indirectly, that the company is playing dirty. And he was only the bear on sell-side analyst. So what happens here is, I was explained what zero coupon convertible bonds are. So quickly, you can convert them into stock and cash out. And that's exactly again Jay Hogue at Technology Cross Venture did. They tried to short squeeze after getting that $700 million after the crash from $330 to $50, $70 at that point. And then we had Boston pensions lost money, Detroit pensions lost money in this whole crash. And then what happens is they were trying to short squeeze, they couldn't then, Fidelity was out of the stock. So they had to bring some more mutual fund guys and other guys to accumulate the shares and concentrated holding again. And they brought in World Capital Markets, they brought in T. Rowe Price, who funded 350 million. So that were two big houses to manipulate, and they accumulated concentrated holding in Netflix stock. So what happens next is, then they are trying to short squeeze again. There was another short guy which was warned. He said, I don't want to mention his name, or I forgot his name anyway at this point. He was his friend anyway. So he was short. He wrote an open letter, Reed Hastings, to him to get out of the way. So we are going to do something. So they knew something, and they covered their short, and they went away. Now, what happens here is, then they were trying to short squeeze, they couldn't. Then they brought in Carl Icahn, the big hedge fund crook that this country has ever produced. He should have been in jail with Mike Milken a long time ago in the junk bond markets debacle, but he is so powerful in this country that he's above the law of the land. He comes in and he takes a big derivative position instead of the stock, call option to buy the stock at certain price, and comes on CNBC, starts pumping Netflix. Another short squeeze is done. Stock is now to stratosphere of $700, or we are going into China, we are going to India, all kind of, rumors, conduct, and how the concentration manipulation of stock, equity, all the fraud research reports, target prices continue. Company was out of cash, then they have to raise billions again. And then Carl Icahn made in a year and a half $2 billion with it, won that Ponzi scheme in the short squeeze, along with T. Rowe Price and World Capital Markets and the hedge funds which are involved on both sides of the aisle, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and Mark Mahoney, who was at Citibank and now is at RBC, is a key mastermind now running the show along with the Reed Hastings gang. It's very shocking when I improved it and I started going after SEC and telling them that now the stuff, what I said is proven, there should be action. But nothing happened. SEC blocked my caller ID. my calls were not being taken, and I screamed into the voicemails. I left filthy messages for a reason, and I'll explain here why I did it. But at the same time, when there was too much pressure, then Robert Khazami made up a story and went to Bill Fagan. William Fagan is also his name, a security chief who handles their physical security at SEC, and making up a story that Ken Santhu is going to come and hurt them or kill them, whatever they went him. And I got a call from Bill Fagan at SEC that and explaining me and yelling at me that I'm going to get you arrested and prosecuted. And I did ask, you can do whatever you want, but please can you hear me out why I'm screaming and what they're doing here, Robert Khazami and gang, Mary Shapiro. And he listened to my story that this is with the Netflix saga that I told him, and I said they blocked my caller ID and it's not returning calls, not taking any action. And Mr. Fagan was such a wonderful person. He served in the army and then he was handling security here. So he said, Ken, and these people just come here to build their resume. It's a revolving door. They have their lobbyists. They go to lobbyist law firms after building their resume. They give a damn to the American people. I can't help you much, but I know you are a good man. You're not a physical threat to anybody, so I'll tell that. But they're not going to do anything for you. So you better stop screaming. And if I can be any help, let me know. Then we came up with the idea. Bill Fagan said, why don't you write me a letter and I'll hand over to Robert Khazami personally if they're not listening to you. Let's stop screaming at them and see if they look into the matter for you. I said they're not going to do, because the mortgage scam was the biggest in this country, stealing the homes of the American people. What do you expect right now? They will do anything? I don't think so. If they're not listening, so there are bizarre actions of blocking calls, caller ID reveals it all. He said, yes, you're right. But I did write a letter and hand it to Bill Fagan via email on the record. And he took that email and handed it to Robert Khazami, in which I demanded the insider trading and price volume manipulation of security crime to be investigated under the facts that I have provided to them. That was not done. Then I was told by Bill Fagan to stay calm for a couple of months. Let's see what they can do. Robert Khazami has promised him to look into the matter. But then we find out and that all of a sudden there were resignations at SEC, and Bill Fagan called me, Ken, did you see what happened? I said, what? He said, Robert Khazami is leaving, Mary Shapiro, the chairman, is leaving, their chief counsel is leaving, the head of trading and markets is leaving. So these people resigned and fled instead of taking anything. And their commissioner at SEC, which I called and left messages for them, nobody gave a damn about it. Now all of a sudden they resigned and left. Nothing happens. Now we were in the limbo what to do. Me and Bill Fagan had a lot of email. He wanted to know more about what's happening. So we were just getting updated on what's happening in the Fraud Wall Street Casino in the US. So then new chairman of SEC was appointed by Mr. Obama after acting chairman held the job for a while. She didn't look into the matter either. So when Mary Jo White comes in, and Obama was saying, oh, she's going to take on Wall Street. But when she comes in and I approached her, and she wouldn't even take my calls, then I left filthy messages for her to provoke them that they will take some action against me, and hopefully they arrest me, and hopefully this whole scam can be brought into the public domain. That was my intention, to scream at them, leave this angry messages, but I did not threaten them in any way. So I just wanted them to pay attention to what I was screaming for. But what happens is Mary Jo White and Robert Khazami was at Kirkland Law Firm. Mary Shapiro went and joined board of directors at General Electric. I was tracking them where they went. Then I called the Kirkland Law Firm, tried to reach Robert Khazami. I told him that you are not going to get away with this crime. So what happened is when Mary Jo White is there, and Mary Jo White and Robert Khazami both got me charged with making harassment calls, indictment, handed to FBI. Now the shocking part is the FBI also has this crime listed for white collar crime investigations. So my question here is, why did not the FBI go and start investigating this matter when they looked at some documents were given to FBI? Now, FBI's job is to actually protect the American people from white-collar crime. They also, in their own report, they say there is a $300 billion white-collar crime in this country every year. So, fellow Americans and congressmen, senators, everybody here listening to this video recording that I'm going to put out there and put it in every domain, please, I ask a question here. FBI failed its duty and were acting as puppets to Mary Jo White like she's the most powerful lady in this country. And I was approached by FBI first twice to my home. Mr. Baker came to shut up. I didn't shut up. I'm cutting because I need to keep this video brief. But there's a lot of story to tell. It's going to be a documentary format later. But now FBI has put all its effort to dig everything on me somehow, to destroy me and silent and let the crime continue and the loot and plunder of the American pensions. And it's a bizarre story, shocking if anybody finds out what's happening. And my life has been destroyed by I was arrested in October 2013 by the FBI, charged with making harassment call statute, which does not even apply in my case. I properly blew the whistle. I properly proved everything, went into the proper procedures. Only I was using harsh language. That's my political speech. I did not call them for harassing them. I didn't have any personal enmity with any of those. But I left. When they were willing to talk to me, I was a civilized person. When they will hang up, they will block my calls. They blocked my caller ID. I have to block my caller ID to get to the system to leave messages on their voicemails. And I left angry and filthy messages out of no respect because they are financial terrorists, nothing more. So then FBI got me arrested, and shocking part is I was kept all hungry all day long that day in 2013 when I was arrested. And I was not even, as I was trained out, I was given a public defender. And when I was produced in a court of law, I was not even allowed to speak. But the prosecution, Mr. This